the Supreme Court rules that the government cannot trigger Article 50 without an Act of Parliament authorising it to do so.
Britain's Supreme Court has had its say on Brexit in one of the most important constitutional cases in recent history. Upholding a High Court judgment against the government, it's ruled that Theresa May cannot trigger formal exit negotiations with the EU without an Act of Parliament. But how much of a blow is this historic judgment to Mrs May? Joining me is Sebastian Payne, the FT's political leader writer. Sebastian, this judgment, is it all bad news for Theresa May, or does she have some crumbs of comfort too?
The whole ruling's been a bit of a damn squib actually today, because we all sort of knew this was coming, that all the signs in Westminster and from the government's preparations for the ruling suggested they knew they weren't going to win their appeal against the High Court ruling that came last year. And the government's had lots of bills and preparations ready, so soon after the ruling, David Davis, who's the Brexit Secretary, came out and said, we accept this, we respect the judiciary, we're going to introduce a bill to the House of Commons within days. It will be the simplest, most straightforward bill to get this process moving. And everyone I've spoken to in government seems very content. They are still going to meet Theresa May's deadline of March 2017 to get Brexit through. So it is a bit problematic because Theresa May did throw her weight behind this appeal, and it could blow up. You know, it's more of a headache that could turn into a migraine for Theresa May if the bill begins to get amended or if the House of Lords tries to stop it. But all the atmosphere suggests that it will go through quite simply and Brexit will happen, but will begin to happen by the end of March.
And in fact, there was some good news for the government, wasn't there? Because there was part of the judgment in which the judges unanimously ruled on the government's side. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the main thing about the ruling that's good for the government is to do with devolved parliaments. That one of the options that could have come out of the ruling was that the devolved assemblies in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland would also have to pass legislation before Article 50 could be triggered. That would have created a huge constitutional crisis for the UK because the Scottish Parliament would not have passed that legislation. The Northern Ireland Parliament is in disarray at the moment. The Welsh Assembly probably would have been okay, but the Supreme Court ruling did say devolved parliaments do not. So it's actually a very good day for Parliament because Parliament has reasserted itself, one, over the Crown prerogative, this is to do with Article 50, and two, over the devolved parliament. So for those of us who believe in a parliamentary democracy, it's a pretty good ruling.
A unified parliamentary democracy, you mean?
Indeed.
And just in terms of the broader picture, one of the things, as you've mentioned, is that people don't feel so charged or excited about this, perhaps as they did with the High Court ruling last year. And that's to do, I think, with the changing perceptions of the way MPs would vote. Tell us about the Labour Party, for example. How's that dealing with this prospect of a legislation to begin these negotiations?
So the key thing to remember with this is that at the end of last year, a non-binding motion was voted on in the House of Commons, which overwhelmingly supported Brexit, and that was Labour and Conservative MPs backed that. Now, that doesn't have any legal standing, but it does show the mood of the House is not to try and go against the will of the people, as some have accused the judging room and today to be. The Labour Party is in a tricky position. They have said they will not try and stop or block Brexit, but at the same time they want to shape it to try and take ownership of it. And Keir Starmer, who is Labour's Brexit spokesman, said today that Labour will propose amendments to this government bill to try and force tariff-free access to the single market or protect workers' rights. First of all, that's going to be strongly contested by the government. The bill they're trying to shape is they want it to be unamendable. We're going to see in the next couple of weeks whether that is the case. But the other fact is the Conservatives don't disagree with that. Theresa May also wants tariff-free access to the single market. She said in her speech last week she wants to protect workers' rights. The real problem with the Labour Party is that the vast majority of its MPs back Remain, while the vast majority of its constituencies voted to leave. And so the party has to tread this line down the middle of not being for Brexit or against Brexit, and the public are just left totally confused about it standing. There's no really good way out of them, and the vote on this bill will put the screws on their position.
Yeah, they're in an impossible situation, aren't they? 2/3 of their MPs represent Leave constituencies, 2/3 of their voters voted Remain.
And this is what's described as the Hampstead to Humberside Bridge the Labour Party has been built on, that it had the Hampstead intellectuals that were behind Remain and the Humberside voters that back Leave. The key question is, which way does the party go? At the moment, it's trying to do the British government's approach and have its cake and eat it, but I have a feeling that's not going to go down so well at the ballot box.
Seb Payne, on the British perennial Brexit problem of eating a cake you also want to have, thank you very much indeed.